So friends, till now we have discussed that the government agencies should promote the establishment of national herbarium, wherein all the relevant data about the medicinal plant species should be catalogued or the databases should be prepared. The herbarium should also prepare the red data books, wherein they should include or they should enlist the medicinal plant species according to their population in the wild or in the geographical range, and they should be categorized as per the classification system given by IUCN, that is whether they are vulnerable, whether they are data deficient, adequate data is available, whether they are endangered, critically endangered, extinct in wild or extinct. So depending upon the population, one should categorize the medicinal plant species under question into the suitable category. So once these red data books are prepared, then the guidelines also suggest that wherever possible, information on the medicinal plants should be stored in the computerized databases, which should follow international data standards and transfer formats where they exist. So apart from gathering the relevant information, cataloging that information, preparing the red data books, computerized databases should also be prepared by the national herbariums or the agencies that are working in this direction. And the major advantage of these computerized databases is that one can easily update these databases, one can easily retrieve the information in different ways. They can easily retrieve the information whenever required, wherever required. And such kind of databases are can be circulated, can be shared with the global agencies across the globe, so that all the agencies in different countries or the global agencies should know what kind of medicinal plant species are under danger in a particular region of the globe, or a particular species is available in abundance across the globe. So such kind of computerized databases should be maintained by the herbariums. Then standards for the plant databases are being designed, proper guidelines are being given by the International Working Group on Taxonomy Databases for the Plant Sciences, that is TDWG. So specific standards, specific guidelines have been issued by this global agencies to prepare the computerized databases. So whatever database is being produced in one country should have a similar kind of format that is being produced by some other country, which is present in some other continent, so that we have a uniform information system, uniform database, so that if a person is working in India, he should not have any problem in studying the information that has been prepared in US and vice versa. Now this International Working Group on the Taxonomy Databases for Plant Sciences is now known as Biodiversity Information Standard, and they have started a program which is known as World Geographical Scheme for Recording the Plant Distribution. So under this program, the distribution of different medicinal plant species across the world, across the planet Earth, are being catalogued, are being recorded in that databases, so that one can access that database from anywhere in the world and get the desirable information. Now we move on to the second major aspect of these guidelines, is the utilization. So in the first aspect was the basic studies, wherein we gathered the information regarding the medicinal plant species, regarding their scientific name, Latin name, regarding their distribution, vernacular name, distribution in the geographical areas, their population, whether these species are threatened or vulnerable, whether they are endangered, critically endangered, or extinct in wild, depending upon their population. So all kind of desirable information were gathered in the first aspect, and appropriate databases were developed. Now the second aspect is the utilization of that information that was gathered previously. So this includes, wherever possible, to cultivate the medicinal plants as the source of supply. So by using the information which was previously collected, one has to select which species are to be cultivated in order to get a uniform source of supply. Then ensure sustainable collection from the wild. So as per the information previously collected, if a species is being collected from wild sources, then we should ensure the sustainable collection practices for that particular species in order to conserve its population. Third aspect includes to improve the techniques for harvesting, storage and production. So if that particular species is being cultivated or it is being collected from wild, we should improve the techniques for its harvesting. Because say for example, we have cultivated a medicinal plant by taking all the precautions, we have got a very good crop. We follow the proper sustainable collection for that particular species also if we are collecting that species from the wild sources. But we do not follow the proper harvesting technique to collect that particular plant. Obviously, if we are not following proper harvesting technique, then also we are going to damage, we are going to cause a considerable loss in the quality of that particular species, which will eventually lead to the burden on the species of that particular medicinal plant. Then we should also improve the storage as well as the production of the products that are being produced from that particular medicinal plant species, because storage has also direct impact on the quality of a particular medicinal plant. So coming on to the first aspect, that is wherever possible to cultivate the medicinal plant as the source of supply. Now till now, as we discussed in the previous lectures, that majority of the demand of the industry is fulfilled by the supplying of the raw material that has been collected from the wild sources or the plant where the plant grows natural or its natural habitat. And in order to conserve the species, stress is laid upon the cultivation of medicinal plants. Why? Because the cultivated medicinal plant species are considered better than the wild plants which are growing under their natural habitat, because under cultivation we are manipulating the conditions that are required for the proper growth of the plant. We are providing all the necessary requirements to the plant in order to grow, in order to attain a proper growth. We are providing all kind of growth regulators, we are providing all kind of fertilizers that are required by that particular species to grow well in order to get a good crop yield. Then cultivated medicinal plants show less variation in the quality, because we are manipulating the conditions, we are giving the best required condition for the plant growth. Therefore, there is less variation in the quality in comparison to the wild sources, because these wild sources are largely dependent upon the climatic conditions which which prevail in that particular region. Then cultivation of medicinal plant is under proper regulations. Proper regulations govern the cultivation of medicinal plants, and government time to time give incentives for the medicinal plant cultivation. So there are different programs that have been initiated by different governments wherein they give appropriate incentives to the farmer which grow the medicinal plants or which cultivate the medicinal plants. Now this is a brief comparison what we have discussed about cultivated versus wild sources. So first one is the availability. So because under the cultivation the medicinal plants are being grown properly, their yield is being controlled properly, therefore the availability is quite stable, and by further manipulating the condition we can always increase the yield of the crop, thereby increasing the availability. But in case of wild sources, since we cannot manipulate the conditions in which these medicinal plant species grow under natural habitat, therefore over the period of time their population or their availability always decreases. So quality, as we discussed, that under cultivation we get good quality, whereas the wild sources over the period of time their quality decreases because of the genetic depletion of that particular species. Then identification is quite reliable whenever we are getting the raw material from the cultivated source, whereas under the wild source it is quite dubious, and it will depend upon the person who is collecting that particular species, whether that person is qualified enough to give the proper identification of the plant or not. So always the identification of or the identity of the plant which is obtained from the wild sources is always dubious. Next is genetic improvement, which can be done in case of cultivated sources, or when the plant is being cultivated we can always improve its genetic quality. either by hybridization, either by incorporating the genetic manipulation or incorporating the desired genetic characters in the crop, we can always improve the genetic quality of that particular plant species which is under cultivation, whereas it is not possible in case of the species which are obtained from the wild source, and as discussed, over the period of time their genetic quality obviously decreases. Next is the adulteration, and there is no chance of adulteration whenever the plant material is obtained from the cultivated source, or there is very little chance of adulteration whenever the plant is obtained from the cultivated source, whereas if we get the desired species from the wild source, there is every possible chance of the cultivation, whether due to the ignorance of the collector, whether due to the collection of the weeds that are growing in the near vicinity of the medicinal plant, or whether due to the wrong collection of another variety of the same species which is morphologically similar. Such kind of adulteration are always possible in case of the medicinal plants if they are obtained from wild sources. Then agronomic manipulation. Now agronomic manipulation is nothing but the optimization of the agricultural method that is being utilized to grow that crop of that particular medicinal plant species. And when we talk about the agricultural technique or agricultural method, this includes the manipulation of the soil conditions, this includes the manipulation of the water conditions, includes the manipulation of the supply of the fertilizers or the pesticides, such kind of factors that can affect the overall crop yield, overall quality of the plants can be easily manipulated whenever you are getting a plant from the cultivated source, whereas such kind of manipulation are obviously not possible in the plants which are being gathered from the wild sources. Then regulation is, so if a plant is being obtained from the cultivation source, then it is quite easily regulated. The samples can be easily approved by the regulatory agencies, whereas if they are collected from the wild source, then we may face certain difficulty in getting the approval of those raw materials. Then incentives, as I told you, the government from time to time they give suitable incentives to the farmers who are cultivating the medicinal plants, whereas in wild sources no such kind of incentives are being given. So this is a broad overall comparison of the cultivated sources or the medicinal plants obtained from the cultivated sources, or they are obtained from the wild sources. Now, in order to improve the cultivation, or in order to promote the cultivation of the medicinal plant species, the guidelines suggest that the Ministries of Agriculture and Health should coordinate a program to establish nurseries where the medicinal plants are cultivated. We know that there are numerous nurseries across the country which provide you the saplings or the seeds of the ornamental plants, but there are very few nurseries which will give you the saplings or the seeds of the medicinal plants to be cultivated. Therefore, the relevant ministries should also give emphasis on the establishment of the nurseries which will provide you the raw material for the cultivation of the medicinal plants. Now, WHO Traditional Medicinal Program has outlined two basic strategies for the production and use of medicinal plants: the agro-industrial production and use of medicinal plants of standardized bioactive constituent, and second one is the distribution of seeds and seedlings and or saplings. Now, the agro-industrial production and the use of medicinal plants of standardized bioactive constituent, this includes the emphasis on the cultivation of the medicinal plant, because during the cultivation, as we discussed, we can control we can improve the quality of the species under cultivation, and therefore this will further help in standardization of those species or their product on the basis of the bioactive constituents. So such kind of approach, such kind of programs eventually will help in promoting the cultivation of medicinal plants, because we will be getting better quality product, we will be getting better quality raw material, thereby producing the better quality product which are to be used by the end users. Then the distribution of seeds, seedlings and or saplings. This is another approach by which we can promote the growth of the medicinal plants. Say for example, in a region, we know that every year there is a malarial outbreak. So what agencies or the local agencies or the state government agencies can do, they can distribute the seeds or the seedlings or the saplings of those plants which are effective in preventing the growth of the malarial parasite, which are natural repellents of such mosquitoes. So such kind of approaches, such kind of practices eventually promote the growth, promote the cultivation of the medicinal plant, not only at the commercial level but also at the domestic level also. Next, we have botanic gardens and horticultural or agricultural institutes should improve the agronomy of cultivated medicinal plants and bring into cultivation those species needed in medicine that have not been cultivated before. So this suggestion includes two aspects. All these botanic gardens or agricultural institutes, they should do enough research, they should work upon that how they can improve the agricultural methods of the medicinal plant species which are already under cultivation, or we can say which have high volumes of trade, which have higher demand. So such kind of improvement can be done in on the line of optimization of cultivation methods. And when we talk about the optimization of cultivation methods, it means which is the optimum conditions of the soil that is required for the maximum growth of that particular medicinal plant species. What are the temperature conditions that are required for the maximum growth of that particular species? What are the water conditions? What are the nutrient conditions that are required by the plant? What are the fertilizer conditions that are required by the plant? What are the pesticides that are required by the plant in order to protect that particular plant species from different kind of pest, which will eventually have an impact on the overall crop yield of that particular medicinal plant species. So when all such factors are taken into account and proper research is being done by the suitable institutes, by the competent institutes, in order to develop a cultivation method wherein all such factors are being properly optimized by following proper research protocols, eventually we will get an optimized cultivation method which will help in improving the overall crop yield of that particular medicinal plant species. This was one aspect. Then second, such institutes should also bring into cultivation those species that are required in the market for their medicinal purpose, but they have not been cultivated before. So one was the species which were already under cultivation, so they work upon to optimize their cultivation method. Second is, there are certain species, though they are used for medicinal value, but they are not cultivated. So such institutes, whether they are agricultural institutes, whether they are botanical gardens, so such institutes, people working in those institutes should work upon to develop well optimized cultivation methods even for those species which are not already under cultivation. So eventually this, as I discussed in my previous lecture, that the cultivation of medicinal plants will cultivation of medicinal plants will not prevent the depletion of a population of a particular medicinal plant species, because though the plant is under cultivation, but still it is being collected from the wild sources also. There are certain medicinal plants which do not have high volume trade, therefore they are not cultivated, but still they are being used for medicinal value and they are collected from wild sources. So such medicinal plants should also be included in these programs, and their cultivation methods should be developed in order to preserve those species. Then we move on to the checklist of the steps in bringing a species into the cultivation. So what are the requirements to bring a species under the cultivation program? And as we discussed, there are species which are not under cultivation, but they are required for their medicinal value. So one has to take into account all these factors if they want to bring that species under cultivation. So first one is the correct propagating material of the most suitable genetic material. So one should collect, one should gather, one should obtain the correct propagating material, the appropriate propagating material. Say for example, if a medicinal plant is being propagated with the help of seeds, and you are trying to propagate that plant material by its stem cutting, so you won't be able to get the proper growth of the plant, or it may not grow. It may not grow at all. So the correct propagating material is required. Its proper collection should be there, and the genetic quality of that propagating material should be very well established. If you are cultivating a plant from its seeds, then the seeds should have high genetic quality. They should be resistant towards any kind of bacterial infection. They should not be having any kind of bacterial infection. They should have high germination rate. Their vigor should be high. So all the factors that govern the genetic quality of the seed should be established, should be properly checked, should be properly established before starting the cultivation of the particular species. Then one should use the best propagation method. Again, the propagation method is important. As we discussed, if you are growing a plant species from a stem cutting, though the best propagation method is to propagate from its seeds, then obviously you are compromising on the quality, not only the quality of that particular plant, but also the yield of the crop. Then best cultivation conditions should be maintained. And when we talk about the cultivation conditions, then all such factors like soil, what kind of soil is best suited for that medicinal plant, because there are certain plants which require calcium rich soils, there are certain plants which require acidic pH. On the other hand, there are certain calciphobous plants which do not grow well under calcium rich soils. There are certain pH sensitive plants which do not grow either under acidic pH, or they do not grow under the basic pH. Such kind of factors. Another one is the temperature. Certain plants require high temperature to produce the desirable secondary metabolite. Certain plants require cooler conditions to grow well. Then the irrigation, water supply, how much water content is being retained by the soil, how much water content is present in the soil, all such factors will affect the overall growth of the plant. So such kind of factors should be properly optimized, and if there is an optimized method, that method should be followed for that particular species. Next is the ways to protect the plant from diseases, pest or the weed. So appropriate pesticides should be used, but yes, there should be a judicial use of those pesticides, not the overuse of those pesticides. Over the period of time, we have observed that there has been an over exploitation of the pesticides, overuse of the pesticides on the crop, which has led to certain toxicity in our biological cycle. Vis-a-vis, it also raises certain safety issues with the medicinal plants, because these medicinal plants are to be used for the medicinal value, for their therapeutic value, and if these plants are themselves are toxic, we cannot imagine the damage they can done to their end users. So there should be appropriate utilization of the pesticides. Rather, WHO they always promote the use of organic techniques to prevent these pests, to prevent these weeds, such as crop rotation is there, use of natural pesticides or herbicide, or plant based pesticides or herbicides should be there. Then various pheromones should be used in order to remove the pest from the crop. So all such kind of practices should be used when you are cultivating a particular medicinal plant. Then best harvesting time is an important aspect, because if you are harvesting the crop before proper time, then also you are affecting the quality as well as the yield of that crop. If you are harvesting the crop after the suitable time, then also you will be having an impact on the quality of that particular medicinal plant. Yes, in terms of the desirable secondary metabolite, and also in terms of the overall crop yield. So therefore, the harvest time should be optimized in order to get the best yield of that particular medicinal plant species. Mechanization should be included in the cultivation methods. Now we have, by virtue of the scientific community, we have very good machines that can be utilized during the cultivation. very good machines which can be used for the proper harvesting of the medicinal plant. So such kind of mechanization should also be included in the cultivation of the medicinal plant, or the method by which is being used for the cultivation of that particular species. And last but not the least, that is the best storage conditions and the method. You have taken all the precautions for cultivating a particular species, you have taken all the precautions for harvesting, you have utilized all the best machines to harvest, to cultivate the plant, but if you are not storing it properly, if you are not maintaining the desirable storage condition for that particular crop, eventually you will be having a deleterious effect on the overall quality of the medicinal plant, both in terms of efficacy as well as safety. So one has to consider all these parameters, all these factors when they have to initiate, when they have to start the cultivation of the medicinal plant species. So friends, this was only just the beginning, how we can use the information that was collected in the first aspect of these guidelines, that is the basic studies, wherein we collected all the data on the medicinal plant species, their abundance, their nomenclature, their population, their geographical distribution, their population size, and in the second aspect we are utilizing that information in order to see whether there is any species that has to be put under cultivation program, or if the species is already under the cultivation program, how we can further improve its cultivation method, how we can further improve the overall yield of the crop, so that we can reduce the burden, some of the burden on the natural resources. So friends, in the next lecture we will further continue with the different aspects of these guidelines. Thank you.